just about to head off for the yellow sands of the desert, but there's some pre-flight activity we have to take care of first. I've been sitting on this story for almost 5 years, because on rare occasions, even after you've found the story sometimes doesn't find you. Ryan Neslin's story. I wasn't really sure what to do with it, and that bothered me because this one should be a no-brainer.
It was just a really freak accident, truthfully. I've crashed 100 times harder, 1,000,000 other times. It'd be like you slipping in the shower almost.
It worked. I mean, really, one of the first people in the United States to get a stem cell transplant in an attempt to research and eventually treat spinal cord injuries? Isn't that story right over the plate? Why, for me, has it been a swing and a miss? Welcome to day in my life. Sweat, hard work, and I hope it pays off. Far from this Arizona gym in the mud and the dust of a Minnesota dirt bike arena, Ryan's life changed.
So I woke up on the track, fully dressed in my gear, not being able to move my lower body. So then they, loaded me into the helicopter on one of those stiff boards, and bam, on, to the hospital.
The diagnosis was quick and unequivocal. What point did they confirm your worst fears, that this was pretty bad?
Right away, the doctor instantly said, "You'll never walk again."
Even years later, the bedside manner, or perhaps the lack of it, it still rankles him.
The words obviously hurt, nobody wants to be told that by some doctor that you're supposed to be respecting. In my opinion, that's not a very respectable thing for somebody to do, but it's protocol, they call it.
Talking with Ryan, here's where I found the story, and here's where the story found me.
And after I think 2 or 3 days, I started being like, okay, this isn't really what I want to do with my life, and there's got to be something out there that can give me a better position.
Stop. You and I, we've been here before, haven't we? Sailing through the blue waters of New Zealand's Cook Strait, we met Dennis Heberly. He goes to bed one night, a viral infection leaves him visually impaired the next morning. And he says this.
I admit there was like 2 or 3 days of a very depressed Dennis.
2 or 3 days?
Yeah.
2 or 3 days? Who does that? I mean, I know people who go home and binge watch Downton Abbey for 2 or 3 days when they get the sniffles. They don't lose their eyesight and then say, let's figure out how to sail one of the most dangerous channels of water in the world. They don't lose their mobility on a Saturday and then on Monday volunteer for life-threatening surgery. And let's be clear, what Ryan was signing up for could have killed him and almost certainly was not going to work, and he knew it.
I'm gonna try my hardest, so I just started calling and everybody I know, and basically called a roommate of mine who I lived with when I was in college at ASU, and she was a nurse in Chicago. So I called her and said, hey, is there anything going on in Chicago? And she's like, I told her about my injury. She's like, oh my God, I'll check it out. I'll see what I can do. And she got on the internet, called me back a couple hours later and said, it looks like there is something here in Chicago.
Enter Dr. Richard Fessler, who needed Ryan almost as much as Ryan needed him.
The stem cell transplantation study, I would consider being a very on the edge type of research. It's very forefront.
Dr. Fessler had been spearheading the first ever FDA-approved human clinical trials of stem cell transplants for spinal cord injuries. When Ryan came to his attention, the clinical trials had been in phases 1 and 2. That means safety and tolerability. Not would they work, just would the body tolerate the surgery, not reject the transplant, and would the cells not mutate into cancerous tumors.
The people in Minnesota are like, well, you should stay here and do your rehab here, your family and friends are here, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I'm out of here. Going to Chicago right now, pack my stuff. And they're like, no, you can't leave, blah, blah, blah. They're freaking out. They're trying, they're like, they didn't believe in it. They wanted me to stay, so.
This is how many days post-accident?
This was probably 7 by the time we got to this.
The medical infrastructure leading up to this point is considerable.
Years of basic research, developing the stem cells, purifying the lines, doing animal research to demonstrate that you technically can transplant the cells, that they will live, that they will grow, that they will make connections, that you actually have an effect on the animals that you are transplanting them into. Then you've got the technical aspects of, if we're actually going to do this in a human being, we have to not only make the cells, but we have to be able to preserve them so that they can be ready immediately to transplant in a patient who gets a spinal cord injury. And that requires freezing them and thawing them and keeping them alive, proving that you can do that, proving that those cells will still be effective.
But it all hinges on the right patient. Imagine it. You haven't even learned how to captain a wheelchair yet, let alone navigate around your own home, and you're volunteering to wing yourself across the country for a surgery that could kill you. That's what I'm thinking about while Ryan shares this part of the story with me.
Because then I'm like, okay, so pack my stuff. I'll call my friends, get a Suburban out here, drive me to Chicago. Day 9 or whatever, I was en route. You know, day 10, I was in Chicago getting, you know, the stringent MRIs and blood draws all day long. You know, day 11 and 12, they were analyzing all that stuff. Day 13, I was, you know, still not knowing, and, you know, but they had to choose that minute or whatever. So they started prepping me for surgery and getting the IVs, and they still didn't know whether or not they were going to do it until minutes before they actually cut me open.
Although we screened more than 100 patients, we only found 5 that we were able to, that met all the criteria to do the transplantation.
Ryan was number 2. Who does that? Getting up to fight that quickly after being knocked down? Short answer, people I've tried very hard to be like. I found the story, that's the story that found me. And coming up on the next post.
I don't ever want to be regretful of anything in my life, so I want to be the happiest person on earth when I'm on my deathbed, because I did everything and I didn't miss one opportunity. I'd be walking and you'd be seeing, you know, I don't know, but you know, it's a great future, and hopefully we're young enough to, you know, reap the benefits of the people developing these formulas and whatever, therapies.
The Palette Project continues with Yellow. That's the next post.